Okay, welcome everybody. So we say in the Psalm of the day is the one who makes, David HaMelech says, the one who makes the eye, can you not see? Or the one that makes the ear, can you not hear? Furthermore, it says that when God speaks, will people not listen? So we're all in a tizzy, rightfully so, for the crisis going on in Eretz Yisrael at the moment. I have 2 kids there, my grandchildren there, so we're all keenly aware of the circumstances. But if not that long ago, if you remember, we had COVID. And more people died in COVID, more Jews died in COVID than what's happening in Eretz Yisrael at the moment. So how come, and the reaction from COVID was not like this, right? So how come for this, we're all up in arms? There's prayer groups, there's actors, there's tremendous connectivity, there's a soul searching, honest soul searching, meaningful soul searching going on. But for COVID there wasn't, and that's what it says. When God speaks, who doesn't listen? This is God speaking. He's talking to us. When God speaks, we hear. Everybody knows the Almighty is sending a message. Everybody knows the Almighty is sending a message. And what the message is, okay, that's a good question. I think a lot of people are really thinking about it. So we say in Mishlei, so I'll show a couple of Mishleis, a couple of Proverbs, book of Proverbs. Listen to this. It's in chapter 6, verse 9. Ad matai atzel tishkav. For how long will the lazy person sleep? Lie down. Ad matai atzel tashkev. When will he get up from his sleep? Now, Shlomo Melech doesn't mean sleep, literally just sleep, although it includes that. He means you don't think about life. You don't think about where this is all going. What's the purpose of it all? Why are we doing all this? Just recently, we saw over Yom Kippur a tremendous, I don't know I haven't got a term for it, but there was a big to-do in Tel Aviv because some people, just a few people, 10 people maybe, disrupted a prayer service in the middle of Tel Aviv, and the whole of Israel was outraged. It says, Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva and the rabbis were on Har Bayis, and they saw a fox. It's a famous Gemara at the end of Makos. They saw a fox leaving the Temple Mount, and they all cried, and Rabbi Akiva laughed. And each one asked the other, why do you cry? Why do you laugh? And Rabbi Akiva famously said, the prophecy that foretold the one disaster is now proving to me that the fortune is coming at the other side. So I talked about this before. I don't think anybody who heard what happened in Tel Aviv and the reaction in Israel cannot hear that the Jewish people are a special people. In America, there have been protests in the last few years. In France, there were protests, I know, in many parts of the world. How did those protests, and arguing about far more serious issues, at least ostensibly, some not so serious. And riots broke out, people burned buildings down, people were killed. I mean, crazy stuff. In Israel, they're protesting. And the worst they do is stop the traffic. So anybody listening needs to realize that they're arguing with each other. It's like, I used to have, when my grandmother, Allah Sham, was alive, my grandmother had 8 children. So I think it was every other Sunday, all the children and all the grandchildren would go to her house. And it was a whole to-do. And all the siblings would sit around in a circle. They used to smoke like crazy. I used to hate going because my eyes would sting afterwards. They all used to smoke. Those were the days. And the air was thick. It's like a cloud in the room. It must have been terribly unhealthy. They didn't know anything about secondhand smoke or anything. They didn't even know about smoking. So, and it was just fighting and arguing and everything. And some of the cousins didn't like it, and some of them thought it was very cute. We all understood on some level, at least I did, that it was an arguing out of respect and love for each other. It wasn't an arguing because, you didn't invite me to the bar mitzvah kind of arguing. It was like they were talking about whatever. It was complete. The issue didn't make any difference. They just needed to find some issue where one side took one thing and one thing, and then they would go at it. You don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. And people understood that, they didn't mean anything by it. It was just at the end of it, everyone kissed and made up, and it didn't even have to make up. Everybody understands that the argument that's going on in Israel, if you're not part of the Jewish people, if you're not Israeli, if you haven't lived in Israel, you don't understand what's going on. You look at the vitriol going on in Israel, and you think it's the end of the world. And it's so absurd. It's just mind-boggling how people don't see it. It was a wonderful thing, but not only do people miss it, but when that thing happened in Tel Aviv, it was a terrible thing what they did. But when it happened in Tel Aviv, the whole of Israel was in outrage. The left too, even the people on that side were upset. This has gone too far. There's no one in America, no matter which side you're on, that thinks that their side went too far. Nobody. This went too far. Now, I don't think there's a real connection between that. Could be. I don't know. I don't have any memos from God lately, but I don't think that's a reason for this breakout from Gaza that we're experiencing. But I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about it. Now, some people I have heard say that this is the result of the disunity in the land of Israel. And I think that's a terrible thing to say. I don't think it's true. And it's not a meaningful way of relating to what's going on. The Gemara, the Talmud in Avodah Zarah, it says that there are two things that are gods. Now, this is a very interesting discussion, which we're not going to get into. But nevertheless, there are things that are man and things that are God. You can build a bridge, that's yours. You can build a store, that's yours. You can make a business, that's yours. The two things, that's God's. Money, people are still trying to figure out why some people are rich and some people are poor. There's some general rules, but it defies definition. Money and war. What does it mean, war? It means that when there's a war, God's rectifying the account. He's taking care of business. He's taking care of business. Now, I want to point your way to a couple of things in Mishlei. Take a look at chapter 6, verse. We're already in there. Chapter 6, verse 9. How long will the lazy person sleep? Ma'at shenot, ma'at tenumot. A little bit of sleep, a little bit of slumber. Ma'at chibur yadayim nishkav. A little bit of folding the arms to lie down. Ba k'merklech gleshecha. And your poverty, your loss, how does he translate poverty? Your poverty, your despair. Despair doesn't cut it either. Your trouble will come. How does it come? It will come. You will lose it. Ki ish magen, like an armored man. Now I predicted. Don't want to give myself any prizes here. That when they came up with the Iron Dome, if you remember, and Patriot missiles and all that kind of stuff, this is a very bad idea. Very bad idea. Because, and that's what Mishlei is saying. Who's the guy who's the most in trouble on the battlefield? The guy with the biggest tank. Because he relies on the tank. And he's not thinking. You get used to the protection you think you have, the innate protection you think you have, and you miss subtle points that a soldier on the battlefield has to be aware of. Now, I don't want to be either of them, but nevertheless, it's the protection which we clearly see was what's happened in this whole Gaza Strip thing. It's because they relied on so many pieces of technology. They knew that the Arabs have nothing. They achieved this success. I shouldn't use the word success. They achieved this tragedy by 20th, maybe even 19th century technology. It's amazing, and you learn a very important lesson from this from a very personal level. You can never tolerate. I don't know if Israel has learned this lesson. I don't think. I don't know. I don't see it. But you cannot tolerate any amount of the Yetzer Hara. If someone's out to get you, it says the Yetzer Hara seeks to kill you, and if not for God's help, you don't have a chance. So the example being, God forbid you're an alcoholic. Right? How much alcohol can you have in the house? You can't. There's no amount. You can't tolerate. Now you have days where you're very determined and you're very motivated and you're very strong and you made a decision you're not going to drink, and that's good. But if you have any amount in the house, it's going to find a way. Your Yetzer Hara is going to find a way to get in. You cannot tolerate somebody, the Hamas, whose only life lesson, only motivation is to go, terribly to kill Jews. They're going to find a way eventually. They're going to find your weak spot. You can never protect against it. It's a very interesting thing. It says in the Chumash. It says in the Chumash, the Yitzchak. It says in the Chumash that Yitzchak was by Avimelech. This is 4,000 plus years ago. And Avimelech was a Plishtim, is where the Palestinians get their name from. He was a Palestinian, he was the original Palestinian. And Avimelech finds out that Rivka is his wife, and he passes a decree. Anybody who touches this man is going to die. So what do the Plishtim do? What do the Plishtim do? Right? So they stopped up his wells. Right? They stopped up his wells. Now, what would the king do to such a person who did such a thing to Yitzhak? Now, Yitzhak is a very wealthy person, and Avimelech knows from his father, Avraham, that you don't mess with these people. They're like, God's on their side, don't play around. He learned that lesson. Whether it's the same Avimelech or it's his son, either way, he understood, you don't mess with Avraham, you don't mess with this family. So someone messed with them. So what would you do in the good old days? You'd kill him. So Avimelech comes to Yitzhak and says, you have to leave. Now, why does he want him to leave? He's a rich man. You want rich people in your country. He gives jobs, brings wealth and fame and fortune to the country. Why does he want him to leave? Because he can't protect him. These people, the Plishtim, the Palestinians, are willing to die, not to kill you, just to ruin your day. Like, whatever Hamas did, and it's a terrible tragedy what they did. No, I'm not minimizing it any means whatsoever. But nevertheless, there's not a thought in anyone's head that this is going to mean success, victory. They don't win anything from this. They know that it's going to be a disaster for them. They don't care. They're willing to pay that price. In other words, there's no defense. Avimelech says to him, does this sound like the same Palestinians? It's the same people. I'll tell you another thing. The Gemara that I quoted in Makos. It says that Rabbi Akiva, they saw foxes coming out of the Temple Mount. So the Talmud has nicknames for the nations of the world. In other words, it gives the nations of the world animals as their symbol. Very similar to like America's an eagle, Russia's a bear, England is a lion, right? You know, the nations of the world pick animals as their symbol. The Talmud says the same kind of thing. What kind of animal is the Plishtim? What kind of animal? Right? And remember, the Romans were running the show at those times. If anyone remembers the Cold War, anyone who visited Russia had to speak in code, because when they visited these refuseniks, they were all being bugged. So they had to talk in a sign language, in a code. They had code words, because the Russians would pick it up and you'd be in big trouble. So the same thing, the Romans they read over it, they had censors. They caught you saying anything nasty about the Romans, they killed you. So Rabbi Akiva says, there's a fox leaving the Temple Mount. When you see a fox leaving the Temple Mount, you know the Mashiach's coming. It's the end. So what's the symbol for the Palestinians? What animal, do you know? Any guesses?
A fox.
A fox! Exactly. We learn it out from Shimshon. That's right, we learn it out from Shimshon. Shimshon the Gibor.
Yeah.
The Talmud says, why did Shimshon use foxes to punish the Plishtim, the Palestinians? He tied the tails of foxes and burnt their fields. Why use a fox? Because the symbol of the Plishtim was a fox. So the Talmud says, you hear what Rabbi Akiva is saying, when you see a fox. So the Talmud says, why a fox? Right? Why a fox? In other words, Esav is a pig. Why a pig? Because it puts its paws out and says, I'm kosher. Right? But really it's treif. It's a pig. But why? So what's a fox? A fox, when it's running away from its enemy, looks behind it. So the Talmud says, that's the Plishtim, that's the Palestinians. They always want yesterday's deal. Does that sound like the Palestinians? Right? We would make peace if you give us the borders of 67. In 67, you wanted 48. In 48, you wanted nothing. Instead, they always want the deal that they were offered last time. Is that the same people? You figure it out. I'll leave it to you. So anyway, right? So getting back to the Patriot missile. So King Solomon says, who's the most dangerous one? Right? You rely on this technology. You rely on this technology. That's the danger. That's the danger that we're in. That's the danger that we fell into. So how did we get here? So you see, how did we get to a people in Israel? In Israel, the Jews in Israel. It's not the Jews in America. In America, I have people that disagree with me on issues. They won't talk to me. They won't talk. Right? They won't talk. But in Israel, they're talking to each other. There were groups from these protests that happened a few weeks ago, for the last 6 months or so. There were groups. My son sent me a text of these groups that are forming in Israel, of opposition groups. They sit in a room, and it's difficult, but they sit in the room and they try and talk it out. There's no such thing. You try and call anyone from opposing view, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or anything, and try and sit down and talk. You can't talk. You can't talk. Within 5 minutes, less than that, within a nanosecond, it's got to vitriolic and then storming out, and it's the end of it. Right? In Israel, they talk. How did they get? How did we get there? So again, another Mishnah. Listen to this Mishnah. It's in chapter 3. Chapter 3, verse 11. Musa Hashem be b'ni. My son, the Musa of Hashem. The Rashi says, what's the Musa of Hashem? Right? When troubles come upon you, they should be dear to you. So King Solomon says, when the troubles come upon you, don't reject them. Don't despise them. Altimas, don't despise them. But altikots, and do not reject. And do not reject my rebuke, my tochacha, my rebuke, my tochacha. Don't reject it. Right? So you see, we have a mitzvah of tochacha. There's a concept called tochacha. That when you see somebody doing something not appropriate, you have a responsibility to tell them. We're not allowed to just sit by. Fascinating idea. You have to tell them. We don't want to tell them. Doesn't matter. You have to tell them. Right? In other words, I'll use a simple example. The guy sits next to you in shul, his socks don't match. You have to tell him. Right? It's a rebuke. He's doing the wrong thing. He looks silly. Doesn't realize it. Like my Mechutin, he's colorblind. I shouldn't laugh at that. But when you hear the story, it's gone. So he told me the story one time. He's a lovely man. I love him. He's a great guy. All my in-laws are phenomenal people. So he when he was a little kid, he went to yeshiva one day, and somehow he learned that the shirt he was wearing was pink. Can you imagine? But he didn't know because he couldn't tell the difference, right? You know what I'm saying? So someone should tell him that right? You have to give him tochacha. You have to teach him the right way, right? You don't say you're an idiot. So how can you be such an idea? You're going to say it nicely with love. Chazal say today we don't know how to give tochacha, but there's still a mitzvah. But the mitzvah is only if you know or have a good indication, you believe that the person will hear it. If last week you told this guy his socks don't match and he got really upset, so this week don't tell him his tie doesn't match. He's not gonna hear, he's not interested, not listening. Right? You only have a mitzvah tochacha if you know that the person will listen. Right? Unfortunately, human beings do not have this information, are not privy to this. We can't really know for sure. So we have to have our best guess. If we think that we've got a good shot, you have to, right? By the way, this mitzvah, there's no asterisk for siblings, for children, for spouses. You want to tell your spouse something they did wrong? The same. I have to admit, I'm not great at this one. But it's something to keep in mind. It's something to follow, something to uphold, something to shoot for. You can't tell your spouse off unless you think point something out, maybe there's a better way of saying it. But if you knew for sure, then for sure you have to say something. And there's many times that you have to say something. The rabbi of your shul, you don't want to tell him, but you know he will listen. He's the Yalkut Shimoni, he's going to listen. You don't want to say anything out of line, that you got to say something, because it's like, it's like, there's the mitzvah to right, you follow? Who does know whether you listen or not? The Almighty. Meaning that if you're going through something that's tough, if you're going through the tahacha of Hashem, you can be certain it's going to get through. You follow? In other words, if you're going through it, or you see somebody else going through it, you gotta know the Almighty knows what he's doing. I thought this person was closed-minded, but what do I know? You see, the Almighty says he can hear it. He's going through the tahacha of Hashem. Right? He's got the tahacha of Hashem. How did the Jewish people in Israel, how did the Jews in Israel become so close that the worst they will do is stop the traffic over things that they claim are destroying the country? If you listen to the vitriol going on, it's a coup, these people are terrible, they're not part of all kinds of terrible things they say. And yet, the worst they'll do, right, is stop the traffic. Well, how do we get there? Now, I want to point out that after the Holocaust, the Germans came out and they said, we want to pay you reparations. The only two times in world history that the victor wanted to pay the victim reparations. The villain wanted to, sorry, not victor, the villain wanted to pay the victim reparations. Both times coincided with entering the land of Israel. 1948 and Yetzias Mitzrayim, leaving Egypt. It's fascinating. Both times. Isn't that incredible? So the Germans came forward. The Jews didn't ask. The Jews didn't want it. And they went to Ben Gurion and said, we want to give you reparations. There was a big debate in Israel. And Ben Gurion, who was not a Holocaust survivor, took the money. And there were a lot of Holocaust survivors in Israel, and they were mad as anything. And they were calling for the overthrow of the government. They marched on the Knesset and stoned the Knesset. Right? But that's how mad they were. Right? We've come a long way since those years, 70 years. And the worst we'll do is stop traffic. And if they did worse, they're shocked. They're ashamed. They're ashamed of themselves that this led to this. How do we get there? Because with everything that's said and everything that's happened, we had a Holocaust. And we've had 5, 6, 7, 10 wars. I've lost count. And we've had constant terrorist attacks. And you know who came to our aid? Nobody. The Americans send aid. And they sent stuff, and other countries have sent stuff too. But nobody's fighting for us except the guy across the street. And after 70 years, every Jew knows you can say what you want, but he's your brother, and he's the only one you can rely on, and you might need it. And when did they learn that? Hopefully for the last time, right now. Right now, they're realizing, everybody's realizing, what are we arguing about? What are we arguing? With people who are willing to either die or send their children, because they'll, God forbid, die, for you. For you. This is the Tahacha of Hashem. And just like it's taken 70 years to mold this people, well, I should really say 3,500 years, but the last 70 years is the most I can stretch myself to. And taking the last 70 years to mold the Israelis, the people who live in Israel. Unfortunately, if you live outside of Israel, you You may get the experience and you may not get the experience. If you live in Israel, you get the experience. It's taken 70 years to form this people into a people who believe in God, a people who understand that Torah is true. This event has just happened. My son, I just spoke to my son, he's in Ramat Beit Shemesh. He told me some good news. He said it's coming out of terrible news, but the Hamas, they threatened Netanyahu that if he doesn't stop this indiscriminate bombing, meaning that up with previous wars, the stupid leftist idiots running the country would announce which building they were going to bomb. Right? You can't make up idiocy like this. But they would do it. Right? This time, they're not doing it. So Hamas is upset. Right? Because they expected to do what they did. They expected to go into their homes. They knew Israel would respond with these announcements, we're going to blow up this building, and all the terrible people would just leave, and then the so-called there's no so-called innocent people in Gaza. The whole people murder, a bunch of murderers. How do you know? Because you go to any one of them, and no news agency would do it, but they should, and ask them, which would you rather have now? Which would you rather have? The state you're in, right, under siege, being bombed to bits by Israel, right, but be run by Hamas, or to be run by the Israeli government? Which would you rather? Which flag would you like flying over the Gaza Strip? They will all say, we'll stick with Hamas. They might say neither, but they won't say, right? Which means they want this. They're the Palestinians. They're the Palestinians. They're willing to die to ruin your day. They're willing to die to ruin your day. This is what these animals, scum. There's no words to describe these people. Rishoyim doesn't do justice. So the Tahach of Hashem has brought us this point. And this, please God, is the final straw. We're going to learn the final lesson that the Torah is the way to go, because we've lost all and my wife was speaking to somebody in Israel, and the most secular Israelis are going to wake up call that they thought Israel was saying, yes, you get these things that happen now and again, and yes, you have wars now and again, but they're on the fronts, they're outside the country. You don't have these rampages like we just saw. You don't have these kind of things. It's hitting all over the country. But it's more than that. There's no end sight, and there's no how do you end this thing? It's going to get bogged down. I'm not sure Netanyahu has the conviction to take it all the way to the end. After a few weeks, there's going to be 10,000 Gazans dead, thank God. And but the world's going to say that's enough. They're going to put pressure. I don't know if Israel's got the strength to determine that. I don't know. Please God, they do. Please God, to really finish the job. But how do you finish the job? There's 2 million Gazans out there. What are they going to do? So Israel's coming to a point like we saw with Amalek, when the Jewish people, before they entered the land of Israel, Amalek took one shifcha, one handmaid, and the Jewish people vowed that if you give us over them into our hands, we will dedicate everything we conquer. It wasn't Amalek. It was, I believe, it was Sichon. We'll dedicate all their property to God. I think it's Sichon. But whatever it was, they took one handmaid. The Jewish people are coming to that point where they realize the only one who's going to save them in this situation is the Almighty is going to help us. Please God, soon, please God, our boys and girls come home safely. No more tragedy in the Jewish people. that should be enough.
But Rabbi, what about the handmaid? What?
They took a handmaid, and that's how we got the lands of Sichon. Because they and that was the tribes of Gad. Oh, I have to find it. I can't find it. I'll find it for you in texture. But they took a excuse me for my ignorance. They took a handmaid. They attacked and took a handmaid as a hostage. And the outraged, right? Because the truth is, we should have been outraged every single time they killed anybody that started a war. They should have started a war with anyone. It's like a disease. When do you take this disease seriously? You're a doctor. When you right at the beginning, you don't wait till like you're on deathbed. Right now, we're going to really attack this disease. You go for it right at the very beginning. The same thing with Hamas, with these scum, these evil people. You didn't take it seriously at the beginning. So now Netanyahu has said, we got war. No leaflets, no warnings. You attack us, we're going to wipe you out. We're going to go after you. Like it's a war. Right? England didn't send, please evacuate Berlin. We're attacking now. Right, in the Second World War, right? America didn't war Nagasaki or Hiroshima. It's a war. You start a war. That's it. That's what war means. They've lost the definition of war. No, you can't. You can't. When it gets too bad, you got to be equal and all this silliness, right? You got to let them know. There's all these liberals, and what the Tahach of Hashem is the Jewish people, the Jews of Israel, are learning that all the liberal nonsense, the whole secular Zionist dream of creating a secular Jewish state in the land of Israel, where we all love each other, the concepts of Ben Gurion and Ariel Sharon and Rabin, all these people, right? Ehud Barak gave back Lebanon, Ariel Sharon gave back the Gaza Strip, Rabin gave them 10,000 guns. 10,000. I lived in Israel where Palestinians, they were terrorist attacks, but the worst they would do was a knife, because none of them had guns. If they found a gun on a Palestinian, the whole army would come in. They would just like investigate how did they get the gun. It was a big deal. And Rabin, idiot, said, "Oh, let's give them guns." If it didn't happen, you couldn't. It's a history that the secular Israelis want to hide from and ignore. But this last battle, please God, our last battle, is teaching them that all that ideology is out the window. It was already half dead. It's a fascinating thing. It's a fascinating thing that in Parshas Korach, that the Jewish people have a fight. Starts off with Korach, that who should be the Kohen Gadol, right? Who should be the Kohen Gadol? And Moshe says, listen, we'll prove it very simply. If you die in this unusual death, the earth swallows you up alive, then you're the wrong guy. They all die, 250 people. Thousands then come out and say, you killed the people of God. It's like you're murderers. Right? Even more people die. God comes and says, listen, let me resolve this issue for you in a nice way. Right? And he says, everybody take a staff, all the leaders of the tribes take a staff and put them in the Kodesh Kadoshim, the Holy of Holies. And whoever staff blossoms, it will be the Kohen Gadol. And Aaron's staff blossoms almonds, and we're all good, right? So Rav Nach used to ask the question, Rav Nach Weinberg used to ask the question, my Rebbe used to ask the question. So why did he do that in the first place? What was with all the drama? Thousands of people dying. So one of his favorite jokes he would tell, and it was very apropos here, was a man sells another man a donkey. And donkeys are known to be very stubborn animals. So he sells him a donkey. And he says to him, this donkey is not like any other donkey. This donkey does whatever you want it to do. It's a very obedient donkey. He says, oh, that's just what that's what I need. I'm fed up with these donkeys that are stubborn. Oh, thank you. He says, yeah, we bred it from a child, from his parents, from his grandparents. It's like bread. Perfect donkey. So about a couple of weeks later, the guy goes back to the seller and he says, you're a ganav. You stole my money. He says, why did I steal your money? He says, the donkey doesn't do anything. It's awful. He says, what do you mean it's awful? He says, it doesn't do what I say. He says, that's impossible. Let me come over and see. So he comes over and he says, look, I'll show you. Donkey, move. Nothing happens. He weighs the donkey up, loads him up. He doesn't move. I go, oh, you're doing it all wrong. Let me show you. And he takes a big stick and he hits it on the back of the donkey. I'm sorry, all the animal lovers here. Peter, I hope he's not watching. And he brings it over there, over the back of the donkey, and the donkey moves. And the man says, well, what are you talking about? This is the same thing as every other donkey. You get the donkey to move because you hit it. He says, no. You don't understand. The donkey didn't move because I hit it. The donkey moved because I told it to move. He says, why did you hit it then? That's just to get his attention. See, right? The Jewish people's got with all these arguments and protests and everything, right? They all got the Almighty got their attention, right? Now they're listening. Now we're listening. This war is we're listening. The Almighty has got our number. He knows how to talk. When he talks, people listen. Don't think we're going through this and going back. The fact that Netanyahu, although I think it's nowhere near as bad as ruthless as he should be, but nevertheless it's a start. Maybe he will be. I don't know. So is not playing by the old rules. He's not playing by the old rules. He's got the message. We are different. We are the Jewish people. And there is a difference between the Jews and everybody else. Despite what Ben Gurion and Ehud Barak and Yair Lapid and all these other idiots would say, that we're all wonderful people and we can all share and sing Kumbaya, my Lord, and have toast together and sit around the campfire, and Rabin and Shimon Peres and all these idiots would go on about we're going to create a new Middle East where we all love each other and it's all hunky-dory. But Netanyahu is making a point, and the Jews of Israel understand this point and agree with this point. There's a difference between a Jew and these people. Then we're not the same people. We're not the same people. And our job is to eradicate them. And our job is to show the world what you do with evil. We're a light to the nations. Stand up and do your job. We're in a new world. A new world. Please God, no more suffering to the Jewish people. No more suffering in the world. Please God. Thank you, everybody. Any questions? We're all good?
Amen. Amen.
Amen.